Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling Plato's Republic.
Definitely a heavyweight in the world of philosophy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But don't worry,
Yeah.
we'll be your guides through all the big ideas
Exactly, we're going to highlight the parts that'll leave you thinking, wow.
and maybe equip you to drop some knowledge at your next dinner party.
Right. Who doesn't love a little Plato with their pasta? But seriously, even though it was written over 2,000 years ago,
Yeah.
the Republic still has so much to say about stuff we deal with today, like
Justice.
power and...
Like so much more.
Right.
Okay, so before we really get into it,
Yeah.
I always find it helpful to set the scene,
Yeah.
what was going on when this was written.
Absolutely. Historical context is key. So picture this. Athens around 380 BCE. They've just lost the Peloponnesian War. Things are kind of chaotic politically.
Oh, no.
There's a sense of disillusionment. And Plato, who is a student of Socrates, is seriously worried about Athenian democracy. Makes sense. So it's out of all this turmoil that the Republic is born.
Yeah.
And it's written as a dialogue, mainly with Socrates debating these big ideas with other characters. I've always loved that format.
It's brilliant because it lets Plato explore stuff from different angles
Oh, yeah.
without necessarily giving you a straight answer.
So it's not like he's preaching at you.
No, more like he's inviting you into the debate.
Right. It's like you're sitting there listening to them, trying to figure things out along with them.
Exactly. And one of the first big questions they tackle is, what is justice?
Oh, man. That's a tough one. What does it really mean? Is it just following the law? Or is there something more to it?
Right. So Socrates does what he does best. He starts picking apart all these definitions of justice that were going around back then.
Oh, I bet.
Some said it's obeying the law. Others thought it was about whatever benefits the strong.
Interesting.
But Socrates just systematically dismantles all these arguments, shows their flaws and contradictions.
So he's making everyone question everything they thought they knew.
Yeah, pretty much. And that was radical then. And it's still relevant now. I mean, we throw around the word justice all the time.
Oh, for sure.
But what do we really mean by it?
Right. Plato's making us dig deeper.
Yeah, go beyond those surface level ideas of right and wrong.
Okay, so we've got this society in turmoil and a philosopher pushing everyone to think critically.
Right.
And then Plato's like, hold my beer. I'm going to create an ideal city.
Enter the Callipolis, Plato's grand thought experiment.
Yeah. And it's not just some fantasy land, right? It's like a carefully designed model.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's meant to show how a truly just society could function.
And one of the key things is its division into 3 social classes.
Right.
Okay, break it down for me. Who are these classes?
So you've got the producers,
Okay,
the ones who keep things running, farmers, craftspeople, merchants, that sort of thing.
makes sense.
And then,
Then you've got the auxiliaries, the warriors and guardians. They protect the city and keep order.
okay, got it. And at the top,
The rulers.
but not just any rulers. This is where the philosopher kings come in. It's exactly Plato's big idea. He thought the ideal rulers would be people who love wisdom and knowledge,
Okay.
and they'd prioritize the city's well-being over their own interests.
So basically rulers who are driven by reason and not power.
Right.
Wow, now that's radical. Can you imagine?
It's a thought-provoking concept for sure.
Yeah.
It challenges us to rethink what leadership should look like.
Totally. So we've got this picture of a harmonious city, everyone playing their part, led by these wise philosopher kings.
Right.
But is that even possible? Are humans actually capable of that kind of harmony?
Well, that's where Plato's idea of the tripartite soul comes in. He connects his ideal society to his theory of the human psyche.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's like a city within each of us.
Exactly. Just like the Callipolis has 3 classes, Plato says the soul has 3 parts: reason, spirit, and desire.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these parts.
So reason is like the wise ruler within us,
Yeah.
always seeking truth and knowledge.
Makes sense. What about spirit?
Spirit is all about courage, honor, a sense of justice, like the guardians.
Gotcha, and desire.
Desire is the part driven by our basic needs and wants. Food, pleasure, all that good stuff.
So it's like a constant push and pull between these different parts of ourselves.
Yeah, pretty much. And for Plato,
Mm-hmm.
inner harmony happens when reason is in charge.
Oh, I see. Just like the philosopher kings ruling the city.
Exactly. Reason should guide our choices.
So it's not just about external laws and structures, it's about inner balance, too.
Precisely. Inner harmony leads to a just society.
This is blowing my mind. Okay, so we've got this idea of justice and the tripartite soul.
Right.
And to really drive it home, Plato's like, let me tell you a story.
And not just any story, the allegory of the cave. one of the most famous metaphors in history.
Oh, yeah, the allegory of the cave. I feel like I've heard that referenced everywhere. Movies, songs, you name it.
It's everywhere. But let's refresh our memories. Imagine a group of prisoners chained in a cave their whole lives. They can only see the wall in front of them.
Okay, I'm already feeling claustrophobic.
Behind them, there's a fire and puppeteers walking by, casting shadows on the wall. To the prisoners, those shadows are reality.
Because it's all they've ever known.
Exactly. But then one prisoner breaks free.
Yes, freedom.
He escapes the cave and climbs out into the sunlight. At first, he's blinded and confused.
I bet, going from total darkness to bright light.
Right. But slowly his eyes adjust and he sees the real world for the first time.
Wow, that's gotta be mind-blowing.
It's a world of beauty and truth beyond those shadowy illusions he once believed.
It's like that moment when you realize something you've always believed is totally wrong.
Yeah. And a whole new understanding opens up.
Yeah.
But the escaped prisoner doesn't just stay in the sunlight. He feels this responsibility to go back.
Oh, to tell the others.
Yeah, to try and enlighten them, even though they might not believe him or even resent him.
That's powerful.
Mm,
It makes me think about the people who try to share important truths even when it's hard.
exactly. That's often how the escaped prisoner is interpreted, as a symbol of the philosopher, the truth seeker.
Who's trying to guide others towards enlightenment.
Yeah, even if it means facing resistance.
Wow, so the allegory of the caves isn't just a cool story. It's a deep reflection on knowledge and belief.
And the human condition. It's about breaking free from illusion and helping others do the same.
And it also connects to Plato's worries about societies being misled and embracing falsehoods.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Which brings us to another fascinating but kind of dark aspect of the Republic.
Uh-oh, what's that?
Plato's exploration of how political systems decline.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, things are about to get real.
He outlines 5 stages of decline, starting with the best form of government, aristocracy rule by the wise,
Okay.
and ending with the worst tyranny rule by a single power-hungry individual.
This feels so relevant today. Like we're constantly hearing about political corruption and stuff.
Right. Plato was definitely onto something. He saw how fragile systems can be.
And get this, he was actually pretty critical of democracy.
Yeah, I know it seems counterintuitive since we associate ancient Greece with democracy.
Totally. So what was his beef with it?
He thought it could easily turn into mob rule, where the masses are swayed by emotions instead of reason and the common good.
That's like straight out of today's headlines, misinformation, echo chambers, all that stuff.
Right. It makes you wonder, are we really making rational decisions? Or are we just being manipulated?
Big questions. And Plato was asking them centuries ago.
He was. And his analysis still helps us think critically about the challenges democracies face.
Like finding the balance between individual freedoms and the common good.
Exactly. And safeguarding against the abuse of power.
So much to think about it. It's like Plato's urging us to be vigilant citizens, always questioning the systems around us.
That's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
Okay, so to recap, we've talked about the historical context.
Yeah.
Plato's quest to define justice.
His ideal city, the tripartite soul.
And we even took a trip into that creepy cave.
Definitely creepy but insightful, too.
And we touched on Plato's analysis of political decline.
So much good stuff. But we're just getting started.
There's so much more to explore.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dive into the lasting impact of the Republic and how its ideas still resonate today.
We'll see you there.
'Cause yeah.
Welcome back, deep divers. Ready to see how Plato's ideas have rippled through history?
Absolutely. It's wild to think about how these concepts born in ancient Athens
Yeah,
still influence us today.
it's true. You can see traces of the Republic in the writings of early Christian thinkers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like Augustine. He was trying to reconcile Plato's philosophy with Christian teachings
So even though Plato came way before Christianity,
centuries before.
his ideas about justice and virtue
Right.
still resonated with these early Christian thinkers.
Totally. Augustine saw in Plato a framework for understanding the human condition,
That's fascinating.
like that struggle between our desires and our longing for something bigger.
Yeah. And then later on during the Enlightenment,
Right.
you had thinkers like Rousseau drawing on Plato's concept of the social contract.
Exactly. That idea that we give up some freedoms for the protection and order of society.
It's mind-blowing how these ideas traveled through time.
It is. It shows how timeless these questions about how we live together and govern ourselves really are.
Absolutely. So, okay, we've established the Republic has had a massive impact.
For sure.
But let's get specific. What are some of the things people still debate today?
Well, you can't talk about the Republic without talking about philosopher kings.
Right. That's like Plato's signature idea.
It raises all sorts of questions about leadership and power.
Like, is it even realistic to have rulers who are like totally wise and selfless?
Right. And who gets to decide who those rulers are?
Yeah. It's a cool idea, but also kind of scary.
Definitely thought-provoking. But even if we don't buy into philosopher kings completely,
Yeah.
it makes us think, what qualities should we look for in our leaders?
That's a question we should all be asking.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the right answers. It's about having these conversations.
Right. Having a dialogue about the future we want.
Exactly. And that's why the Republic is still so relevant.
Yeah, it's not giving us all the answers. It's making us think.
It's pushing us to keep asking these big questions.
And speaking of big questions,
Yeah.
I keep thinking about the allegory of the cave.
Ah, a classic. What about it?
It's made me reflect on my own beliefs.
Yeah.
Like, have I ever been stuck seeing shadows?
It's a powerful image, right? It makes you question everything.
Totally. And realizing you might be wrong about something can be tough.
It is. But that's part of the journey,
And then there's the challenge of sharing what you've learned with others.
especially if it goes against what they believe.
Yeah, that can be really hard.
But that's where dialogue comes in.
Oh, I see.
Creating spaces where we can respectfully disagree and try to understand each other.
That's so important. And it goes back to what we said about education.
Right. It's not just about facts, it's about shaping character.
Teaching people to think critically and make ethical choices.
Exactly. That's crucial in today's world where there's so much information flying around.
It's like we're drowning in information but starving for wisdom.
That's a great way to put it. We need to be able to sift through all the noise and find the truth.
And to do that, we need those critical thinking skills.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Republic has had this huge impact on philosophy and politics.
And even pop culture.
Right. Think about movies like The Matrix.
Oh, yeah. That totally has those allegory of the cave vibes.
Totally breaking free from a simulated reality.
Seeing the world for what it truly is.
It shows how these ancient ideas can still resonate with us today.
It's like Plato's still speaking to us across the centuries.
He is. And as we move into the final part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
we'll shift our focus to what the Republic means for us personally.
I like that, bringing it back to the individual.
Because ultimately, these big ideas have to matter on a personal level, too.
Okay, so we've explored like all the big ideas of the Republic.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
But now I want to like bring it back to you, the listener. What really stuck with you?
Yeah, what resonated? What sparked your curiosity?
I'm still thinking about those philosopher kings.
Yeah,
Like, it's a cool idea, but is it really possible?
it definitely raises some questions.
Yeah. Who decides who's wise enough to rule? And how do you prevent them from becoming corrupt?
Those are the million-dollar questions.
But even if philosopher kings aren't realistic,
Right.
it makes you think about the qualities we should want in our leaders.
Oh, totally. What
I
kind of
love that.
knowledge, what kind of values?
Exactly. What would equip them to handle the challenges we face today?
That's something we all need to be thinking about.
Absolutely. It's not about finding the perfect answer. It's about asking the right question.
And having those tough conversations.
Right. And that's what I love about the Republic.
Yeah.
It's not giving us a blueprint. It's giving us a starting point for dialogue.
And speaking of starting points,
Yeah?
I keep going back to that allegory of the cave.
Such a vivid image, right?
It really makes you examine your own beliefs.
Makes you wonder if you're mistaking shadows for reality.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
And sometimes realizing you might be wrong about something.
Yeah,
It can be kind of tough to swallow.
it can be. But it's also liberating. And then there's that whole thing about trying to share what you've learned with others.
Right. Especially when it challenges their beliefs.
That can be so hard. Like, how do you even start those conversations?
It's definitely a challenge. But I think that's where Plato's emphasis on dialogue comes in.
Oh, how so?
It's about creating a space for respectful disagreement, where you can listen to each other and maybe even learn from each other.
That's a good point. And it's not about forcing your views on anyone.
No, it's about understanding.
And maybe even changing your own mind.
Exactly. And it goes back to what Plato said about education.
Oh, yeah. It's about more than just facts.
Right, it's about shaping character, developing critical thinking skills.
And fostering that love of truth.
Exactly,
Yeah.
which is so important these days.
Seriously, with all the misinformation and echo chambers.
We need to be able to think for ourselves, evaluate information critically.
It's like we need a modern-day version of Plato's Academy.
A place where we can come together and wrestle with these big ideas.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a fancy institution.
right? It could be a book club, a discussion group, even just a conversation with friends.
As long as you're engaging with those big questions.
Exactly. And that's what Plato's all about.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah?
I'm feeling both inspired and kind of challenged.
How so?
Inspired because Plato reminds us that we can create a better world.
Through knowledge, through justice, through reason.
Yeah, and challenged because he's setting a high bar.
He is. But I think that's the point. He's pushing us to be better, to think deeper, to never stop questioning.
And to engage in that ongoing dialogue that shapes who we are.
Beautifully said. I hope our listeners will take these ideas and make them their own.
Yeah, find what resonates with you and keep exploring.
It's been a pleasure diving into the Republic with you all.
Me too. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep seeking those deeper truths.